SVV on Bohemian judges. Life in the Mufassil courts is much more easy, pleasant and natural than in the metropolitan ones. I mean judges and lawyers in the Mufassil courts, generally never artificially keep up our court manners and behavior at high pressure and tension affected by the superior courts, in the belief that such grim and solemn deportment was necessary to maintain the dignity and majesty of law and justice. We permitted ourselves a great deal of laxity and looked upon each other's lapses from conventional standards of conduct with some amount of indulgence and toleration. It would, for instance, not be uncommon for a lawyer to snuff in the public court in the midst of his argument with only a certified copy of a deposition screening his snuffing from the eye of the judge, and afterwards, as an effect of the snuff, to go on arguing through his nose for 3 minutes before his normal tone resumed, the judge pretending not to notice it. I knew a judge who, from the bench, used to borrow snuff from a member of the bar, of course, without offending the proprieties. Mr. R was all that the judge said, but there was a freemasonry in the tone. It as much as said, Mr. R, 1, I am in need of a pinch. Mr. R understood, smiled, and approached the dais, pretending to go there on some business, and secretly slid his snuff box on the judge's table. The judge pretended to keep talking to some lawyer so as to divert the attention of the bar, while his hand, wandering in the direction of the box, took it secretly and extracted a pinch out of it. And then he dived his head under the table. A sound was heard, and the taking in of the necessary refreshment was over, and the proprieties preserved. This partiality of the judge in borrowing snuff only from Mr. R aroused the jealousy of the other snuffing members, who began to rival one another in capturing the goodwill of the judge by tempting his olfactory nerves with their own superior stuff, which they first introduced to him at the club to create an exclusive craving for theirs. There was another subordinate judge I knew, a Malayali gentleman, who came to the bench with his cheek swollen with betel and tobacco. He kept it in his mouth until he rose for lunch, and it was a wonder to the chewing members of the bar how he managed it. The judge expressed himself in the court only in pantomimes. The members of the bar generally never minded these lapses from good manners, and never made any complaint of them except when the judge became otherwise unpopular. On the other hand, such a display of freedom from conventionalities was always appreciated, because at bottom it indicated the judge's natural bent for free and easy manners, which the bar always welcomed. There was a deputy magistrate in the place where I was practicing, a dear old soul, whom we all loved for his good nature, high judicial integrity, and his extreme bohemianism bordering on eccentricity. One might see him in the morning taking short up and down walks in the public road in front of his house for exercise with merely a dirty towel thrown on his back. As a diversion, he would engage every passerby in conversation irrespective of his status in life. If a milkman was passing by, he would call him and ask him how much water he added to the milk that day. Tell me honestly and in the name of God and your father, how much you added. Go on, tell me. He would insist and then dismiss him with an exhortation not to be wicked and commit atrocities, but to remember that there was a God above before whom he would have to answer for his sins. Or, if a man was loading something in a cart in the opposite house, he would shout from where he was, "You idiot! Is that the way to lift the thing? You are sure to slip it down and smash it." And ask the opposite house man where he got this wonderful fellow to do the work. And not unlikely, he would himself go and show the coolie how the thing should be lifted and loaded into the cart. Frequently he took walks round the streets with the same dirty towel on, and if he happened to pass by the house of a lawyer who had a criminal appeal before him that day, he would shout his name from the street. When the lawyer came out with appropriate deference in his face, he would ask him if he had not an appeal before him that day, and questioned him how he was going to get over the evidence of prosecution witness 4. "I have read the papers. Prosecution witness 4 is going to be the ruin of your appeal," he said. "Come to the court exactly at 2 p.m. I am going out into camp at 3. Don't say you had work in this court or that court. If you don't come at 2 p.m., I will close your appeal or you will have to come to my camp 20 miles away." He was a member of our social club and a boisterous member at that. He was inordinately fond of cards, and there were occasions on which he and some lawyers sat the whole night out at the club, playing cards, ordering food to be brought there. At the game, there used to be any amount of shouting, boisterous quarreling, and bearing each other down. The lawyers who played with him frequently charged him with bad play that would load best on his head for wrong play, and at every 2 games he would be loaded with bests. He had indignantly defended himself, but was generally overpowered, and then he submitted sullenly. When the lawyers assembled in court and work began, he would first take up a criminal appeal and ask the appellant's lawyer to go on. Before the lawyer had spoken 2 sentences, the magistrate would turn to another lawyer in the group and ask, "Why do you say, mister, that I ought to have played the Diamond Queen? The whole of last night I thought over the matter and I concluded that I ought to have played only the Diamond Queen. Why do you say that I ought not to have?" "Because you ought not to have played anything that could be roughed by the other party." "What if he roughs? After trumping he must play only the hearts, I suppose." "No, he won't play the hearts. He will play only the 10 of spades. Even so, I had the spades king in my hands. But the other man above you had the above man. But the other man above you had the ace. Well then, let that trick also be his. But the rest of the tricks must be ours." "How can they be? There is a trump left over the opposite party." No, there is a mistake somewhere. You will see, I shall demonstrate the whole thing to you this evening by distributing the cards and playing it out." And then, turning to the arguing Vakil, Why do you say that the evidence of the Karnam should not be believed? The argument of the lawyer would go on through another 3 sentences, and then the magistrate would suddenly turn to the former lawyer and say, "You make a mistake. The man above me had no spade says. It had already been cut." "No, it has not been," the lawyer would answer, and the argument of the appeal would then proceed. I had once a criminal appeal before him. As I was entering the court hall, "Mister," he said, and with his forefinger wrote a cipher in the air. "That is the result of your appeal," he said. "Thank you," I said, and quickly retraced my steps. Come here. You have not learnt why your appeal fails?" He said. "Now that it has failed, I am not interested in knowing why," I answered, and then he began to argue and convince me that his decision was right. As he was arguing, I said, "Please excuse me, I have got to work in the other court." The usual practice is for a lawyer to argue and the judge to say that he does not agree. Now you argue and I say I don't agree with your arguments. "Good evening," I said, and started to walk out of the room. "Don't go away, mister. I have not yet written my judgment. Tell me your arguments. Let me see what they are," he said. And then I argued the appeal and won it also, because the magistrate was such an upright man that neither fear nor favor influenced his judgment, nor was he self-willed and self-opinionated. These cases of extreme judicial Bohemianism are, of course, not the normal things. I have mentioned them because they came within my personal knowledge, and just to show how far these abnormalities are sometimes attached or sometimes stretched, and how instead of being resented by the lawyers, they are taken very good naturedly and in very good humor. The only thing a lawyer resents is as an offensive behavior towards him on the part of the judge. I shall continue.